You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I had to give that one a little bit of extra oomph, so to speak there. We're coming off of the Super Bowl Sunday, and what a Super Bowl it was. I know a lot of folks out there were kind of talking about the fact that they didn't necessarily think that it was at great of a game. Some of that kind of stuff. I thought it was a terrific game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And part of the reason that I may have enjoyed it as much as I did was the simple fact of, we had some things on the line and playing, and they turned out well. But this is another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Derek, and I'm joined as always by your co-hosts Kevin and Alex. Guys, how we doing tonight?
Doing great, man. And it was a really good football game. It wasn't the high scoring affair that a lot of people wanted to see, but it did have all the elements. It had lead changes. It had impactful fourth quarter play. It had some turnovers. It had the stars making star type plays throughout the game. It just didn't hit the over. We talked about this. I know, Derek, we were kind of on opposite sides a little bit when we were going through some of the prop bets, but guys, I was trying to tell people, don't expect to hit the 48.5. And it is what it is. It was a great game. It was the greatest halftime show the Super Bowl has ever put on. And if anybody says different, I will fight you. It absolutely was. It was a wonderful experience. It was a great way to finalize the NFL season for 2021, another close 3-point game. So kudos to the NFL. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams. And, give them hell. Let's see if they can circle it back now.
Full disclosure, on Super Bowl Sunday, I was actually at a live sporting event. Actually, it's one of the first live sporting events that I've been to since the start of the pandemic in a fan role, not as a media member. I learned the hard way that you don't need to go to the ATM before you go to any sort of professional sporting event anymore. Because I had all this cash in my pocket, and then everything was card. Everything's all plastic. Card. It's all card. Yeah. So that was fun. It was the only Dallas team to play on the Super Bowl. In however many years it's been, they did the Colorado Avalanche. To play on Super Bowl Sunday. Sorry, it was the Dallas Stars playing the Colorado Avalanche in Dallas. I went to that game. The Avs pulled off a 4-0 victory. Derek, if you had anything on the money line, kudos to you.
I did. I need them to hurry up and get their acts together tonight because they're messing with my
they're not doing so hot tonight.
Yeah.
They didn't run it back 3 days later, which is surprising given how good they've been at home.
So I missed the home game.
I missed the first quarter, which was okay, I guess. So I missed some of the props on my way back from Dallas to home. But I was thoroughly entertained the following 3 quarters. That was a heck of a football game. Kevin, to your point, I knew we'd talk about the halftime show when one of the only texts that was traded in the group chat was best halftime show ever. And it was a great halftime show. It was one of those that I think that, I kind of half expected it to be a hip hop in Atlanta because Atlanta is known for, the hip hop community that it has down there. And I'm glad that the NFL did it for LA. I think that was iconic. I think that brought a lot of people into the game. I think, I think it brought a lot of people that otherwise just watch for the commercials or watch for the halftime show. I think it opened up to a new audience that way. I think if you look at some of the numbers, the viewing numbers are crazy high, over 110 million.
Television show in 5 years.
Yeah.
Covering the pandemic and everything else. Crazy high.
Yeah, so a fantastic event for the NFL to pull off. There were obviously questions surrounding it, especially with, you had a big market team with LA, right? But you also had a small market team with Cincinnati. And so I think when you get that, I shouldn't say it's a smaller market team, but a non-traditional power two real non-traditional powers in the NFL. I think there's a lot of intrigue into how this one was going to play out. As much as I hate to say it, I think there's Tom Brady fatigue, which we don't have to deal with anymore. And so I think it opens some things up. I think it opens the door for the new fatigue, which will inevitably be, I think, Patrick Mahomes fatigue. I think we're all going to get tired of that, especially us as Broncos fans. We're really going to get tired of that over the next 10 years. But I think I think there was so many cool storylines around it. The fact that it was, LA playing at home, a Cincinnati team that, you could really get behind because they were they really were a true underdog story to get there. Nobody gave them a shot at the beginning of the year. And then here they were playing the last game of the year. And I think all that culminated into what was a pretty good football game. As you said, Kevin, stars making star plays. We saw, some questionable calls that we thought, oh man, how did we, that missed PI. I mean, when it happened live, I figured something happened. Like Jalen Ramsey just doesn't do that. He just doesn't fall down like that. That's not something that Jalen Ramsey does. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see that he got his face mask ripped halfway to the Pacific Ocean while was it Tyler Boyd went past him and caught the touchdown, or T. Higgins, excuse me. We saw Joe Mixon pass, which helped a lot of people who had the over-under on number of people who would attempt to pass in the game. If you took the over there at 2.5, that scored you big points. We saw, a fourth quarter drive that I don't know that like everybody in the world knew that it was going to be Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp matriculating the ball down the field. It just, how are they going to do it? And the Rams, they pulled it off. And there were some questionable calls at the end of a fairly clean football game, I thought. There were some plays that should have been, flagged that weren't. I thought the referees did a good job. So just overall, it was an enjoyable game. I think I enjoyed it because I didn't have any money riding on it. Like I actually just sat and enjoyed a football game for a while. Like I haven't done that in a couple of years. And so it was really fun to just enjoy the game. I had this overwhelming feeling that, LA is going to win, but the Bengals are going to cover. And sure enough, that 4.5, the Bengals covered the 4.5 and LA won.
Yep. Well, that was one of those that I sent you guys a couple of my parlay cards that I did for the game. And so Alex, I had the opposite where you didn't have anything writing on that. I had bets galore all over the place on that one and ended up hitting a couple of big ones, right? Like I hit a plus 10,000 odds one, called the exact score on that one. When we were talking last week, I said it was going to be a field goal game type of thing, 24-21, 23-20 type of deal. Ended up betting both of those outcomes. That was my plus 10,000 I hit. And then Kevin and I were talking before the game there as well. And I shared with him a plus 5,000 parlay card that I was working on. And that one ended up hitting as well, which went very much along the theme that we talked about last week as well, where the Rams on the money line, the Bengals to cover the 4.5, the under to hit. And then on that particular one, I also threw in the overs for over for both Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford of 229.5 passing yards, Tyler Boyd over 34.5 receiving yards, and an anytime Cooper Kupp touchdown. So, ended up hitting those ones and just felt, that was one of those that when those hit, that makes the game watching even more enjoyable. But we even had a whole lot of, good football along the way and an overall enjoyable show. And it was really kind of from start to finish. There wasn't really those parts in there where like the halftime show sometimes lets you down. Sometimes the gameplay throughout it doesn't necessarily live up, but we saw very good things throughout the entire game there. So I was very excited there. We've got a lot more topics, or another big topic that we'll get to concerning one of the players on from this game here towards the end of the show when we'll get into our debate type of thing. Little tease there, as Alex likes to call it there. But what other thoughts do we have about the recap here?
The Cincinnati front seven did a really good job in this game, guys. Like they did a wonderful job stopping the run and really making the Rams one-dimensional. And it took the Rams a minute to figure it out, especially after OBJ went down with his knee injury. And that was so unfortunate to see because honestly, the way that first quarter was kind of trending, you might have seen OBJ as the MVP of the Super Bowl, not Cooper Kupp, because they were on a mission to get him open. They realized what Ramsey was going to be trying to do with Kupp, and you saw it in their touchdown drive, right? OBJ, and here we go. You dash in a little Cooper Kupp, you give the threat of it, and then you let OBJ go make spectacular catches, and that's what he did for the touchdown. It was unfortunate that he got hurt, but overall, Cincinnati's front seven did a good job. They stopped the run. They got after Matthew Stafford. A couple breakdowns in coverage, but those breakdowns came at the most inopportune times, unfortunately, for the Bengals. And Stafford and company they were able to make him pay. And then on the flip side, it was one of those situations where the front seven for the LA Rams, they got after it, guys. Holy crap, 7 sacks. Aaron Donald did his thing. Von Miller looked like he did for Super Bowl 50, right? He looked 6 years younger playing in a Super Bowl again. So kudos to Von, being the Denver crowd that we are. Kudos to him. But man, it was just so entertaining. Like I never found myself going, man, this is dragging on. Like it was never anything like that. You saw the gameplay pan out. You saw the adjustments that the coaches were making and how they were trying to get some guys open. And Joe Burrow he's such a tough quarterback, right? To take the amount of sacks that he did in a playoff run and still, get up and finish the game. Luckily on a knee that doesn't need to be surgically repaired. The news came out today, so that was good. But man, oh man, he got banged up. Stafford got banged up with his ankle. OBJ with his knee. Eric Weddle tore his pectoral in the game. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was just, they left it all out there. So kudos to both teams, and this was a game truly worthy of being on the grandest stage. And it was a hell of a lot of fun because it's teams that we haven't seen much of lately.
And I think the other thing that made it enjoyable is there kind of was something for everybody there, right? Like there was good defense on display. There was, offense, that these coaches that were all in. I mean, you're going for it on 4th down in the first quarter. You're going for it on 4th down at the end of the game. Like it was a well coached game. It was, as I said, a relatively clean game. There wasn't, penalties didn't decide the outcome. I don't care what you say. Like the Rams were going to score that touchdown no matter what. Like that was
real quick happen. On that one. For everyone who's pissing and moaning about the holding penalty that got called, that really was kind of a phantom holding penalty.
Sure.
I do believe it was a makeup call from the very play before, where they missed the holding penalty on Cam Akers or D'Angelo Henderson, and I don't remember which back was in, but as they were coming out, because they were 6 yards down the field and completely got yanked on and spun around, and the refs let it go. So tit for tat, maybe, but no one wants to talk about that play before where there wasn't a PI or a holding call made, and instead they want to talk about the one that did get made. Like, it all washes out. It all washed out. It played out exactly how it was going to play out either way.
We have the saying, the saying you'll hear all around is, a ball don't lie. And in this case, whether it was a missed call from the play before, the phantom call from the very next play, the ball don't lie, right? Like something was going to happen, right? Like LA was firing on all cylinders on that drive. And it was just the inevitable, the fact that they needed to get the touchdown because the missed PAT early on, how crazy was that? They miss a PAT just because Hecker forgot to put the football down, and then all of a sudden it's, a fire situation. The other thing too, guys, and I don't know if you've seen it, I just saw it not too long ago. It's making the rounds on social media. There is a camera angle on the very last play, and it shows that Jamar Chase had gotten open on that very last Bengals play. And if Joe Burrow was not under the duress of Aaron Donald and Von Miller and the rest of, the Rams, defensive front, he might have had a shot at Jamar Chase. And how bonkers that would have been if he would have found him, because Ramsey actually did fall down on that play. I guess maybe he might have been helped. I guess, I don't know, but that screenshot shows, that Jamar Chase was open, and how often do you get that opportunity? So I think it was a lot. There's a lot to dissect when you break down a game like that, and you have all these eyes and all these cameras and every angle of every play. There's a lot to break down, but when it comes down to it, it was a good football game, and I think the better team won. And I think those plucky upstart Bengals. Who knows if they ever get back there, but they sure proved that they were a handful, and they were going to be a tough out, regardless, this playoff run, and they were right up to the very end.
Right. Well, and they're going to be a little bit of a dangerous team here too, looking over the next couple of seasons, because they really don't have too many players hitting free agency on that roster. They've got a lot of that core locked into contracts over the next 3-4 years. In a lot of cases, they've got the draft picks. They do still have room in free agency here as well to go out and address that offensive line, and to the point where you bring in an offensive lineman through the draft, maybe one or two of those guys to shore up some of those positions, add some depth there, maybe try and bring in a free agent or two along that line that you can do that as well. That they shore up that offensive line. That's a scary team going forward, right? The defensive side of the ball, we saw them do very well on that throughout this playoff run. They had moments throughout the season where that defense looked really good there as well. That receiving core that the Bengals have, certainly one of the better in footballs, and Joe Burrow really, starting to create the legend of Joe Burrow there as well. So, that's one of those that, and we talked about this a little bit last week, where that was a concern when I was, building out some of those narratives, things like that, when I was talking that, the Joe Burrow is going to have to get the ball out extremely quickly because that line is the Rams are going to be able to get pressure on him, this, that, and the other. And we saw that play out to the point where he was getting the ball out of his hands very quickly, but still sacked 7 times. Now, an interesting thing to look at that when you talk about a quarterback that gets sacked 7 times in a game, like if your quarterback's is under that much duress throughout the game, you shouldn't be in the game typically that late into it, and only having a chance to drive down there to either tie it or take the lead type of thing there. But we saw that happen multiple times throughout this playoff run, right? The Titans sacked him 9 times. They ended up winning that game. The Rams ended up sacking him 7 times in this one, and they were still in the running to go down on a final drive and either try and tie the game or win the game with the touchdown there. So I think that team is going to be a scary one looking forward over the next few years.
I will say too, we're starting to see, and it's not every year. And now that Tom is gone, right? Now, well, we think he's gone at least, right? Now, as we sit and talk today, Tom is not playing next season. But now that he's gone, there's kind of this, I think there's a formula out there, and this isn't anything new to anybody who's, who really pays attention to it, but you have to hit on a quarterback early, and they have to be playing maybe just a little bit above their experience level. But if you hit on a quarterback early, the contract limitations, when they redid that, the CBA and limited how much first round draft picks could get paid, it allows you to build a team around them, right? And there's no more complete team sport than football, right? You need all 11 guys on the field at one time to do their job in synchronization in order to get a yard, right? So if you can do that with a young quarterback, and you can build a team around that because you still have that quarterback for relatively cheap, then your window of opportunity opens up a little bit sooner. But you need to have that quarterback, and you need to have the coach in place to handle that quarterback to build the team around as well, which I think makes it all the more frustrating when you do get a quarterback that we all kind of agree is a can't miss talent, but you have nothing else around him, and that window it never opens, before it just gets slammed shut. And that's what we're seeing down in Jacksonville. That's what we're seeing kind of in Chicago right now. And yes, Fields is only in his first year, and they've got the opportunity to maybe open that window a little bit. But man, how special it is when you've got a really talented quarterback for relatively cheap that you can afford to pay other players around him to make a team and make a run at a championship. So this formula is out there. I don't know, how many teams can actually operate it. And now with Tom gone, I mean, it's a wide open field in my opinion. Like I know that we think that Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes are going to run the AFC for a while, and they might. They're really young, talented quarterbacks, but there's going to be other opportunities for some of these teams because you only have to win one, right? It's not a 7-game playoff series. You just got to be better on that day.
Right.
Yeah. And the AFC's stacked at quarterback right now. They just are. Like you said, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, you have Lamar Jackson,
Justin Herbert
right there as well. Justin Herbert, who's done a lot of good things in his first 2 years. Derek Carr is not that caliber of quarterback, but he is an efficient quarterback.
He's good enough to get you there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen worse quarterbacks take a team to the Super Bowl than what Derek
Brad
Carr.
Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. So, there a lot of good long-term solutions on the AFC side. Technically, Deshaun Watson's in the AFC. Now, we'll see if he ever plays for the Texans again. He didn't this past season, but at the moment, he's an AFC quarterback as well, and he is all-pro caliber, or at least was last time we saw him on the field. So a lot of talent at quarterback in the AFC. So I completely agree. Like getting to one is a challenge, and these guys are going to beat each other up here for the foreseeable future. The next, like I said, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, depending on how their contracts go. But it's always going to be fun watching AFC playoffs. It feels like just with this young group of quarterbacks coming up that they're just going to be headhunting each other.
It's going to be fun until we realize that Denver's not on that list anywhere anytime soon. But maybe I'll hold out hope that my thought process for last offseason comes to fruition this offseason.
I'll be right there with you, holding out hope. But that also kind of begs the question too. If you start seeing some of these quarterbacks potentially come up in some free agency, things like that, which it seems like those quarterbacks are more willing to test out the free agency market than what we used to see happen, where it used to be, it took something massive to get a quarterback to change teams, especially at a higher caliber type of quarterback there. How many of those guys, if they start coming up to free agency, don't start looking to go to the NFC side of things where the quarterback play isn't necessarily as top tier caliber there, and you may end up having a little bit easier road through the playoffs there as well. So just kind of an interesting thought there.
Yeah. Well, and it shows me, if you are mediocre in the NFL, that's where you stay.
Right.
Like Alex's reference, right? Young quarterback, cap space, build around them, everything else. The other that has worked in recent years has been selling the farm to get veteran presence and have those guys get it done. Right. Tampa Bay did it last year when they brought Brady in. This year it worked with what the Rams did, bringing in Stafford, bringing in Von Miller, signing an OBJ off of free agency when it was the media and the world around him was kind of labeling him a pariah. Even the Broncos back in Super Bowl 50, right? They kind of reinvented the wheel, went all in, and it wasn't necessarily a young group of guys on that Broncos team that won that game. You hit some guys in their prime, in their secondary, but then it was a lot of guys who were DeMarcus Ware types and Aqib Talibs who were getting a bit older and bringing these guys in to play with said Hall of Fame type quarterback.
The ghost of Peyton Manning.
Yes.
Hey, I don't care. It won us a Super Bowl. It was
Won us the
fantastic.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to think that the ghost of Peyton Manning, as you just put it there, Alex, and they ended up winning it with that team, whereas they got stomped when the Broncos went in there with a Peyton firing at all cylinders and one of the most dynamic and high-powered offenses we had seen in the NFL going into that Super Bowl, where they got demolished by the Seahawks.
I don't recall that Super Bowl ever happening.
Yeah, the most of Colorado kind of tuned out.
It goes Super Bowl 47, something, Super Bowl 49. I don't recall. Don't recall the.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you.
That was one of the best and one of the worst days in my entire life, because the morning of that Super Bowl, and I know we're getting in the weeds here, but the morning of that Super Bowl is when my lovely wife told me that she was pregnant with our first child. So the morning started out at such an amazing high, like, holy cow, this is awesome. I'm going to be a dad. Like, so cool. Fast forward about 8 hours.
One snap into the game, and it's, oh no.
Yeah. Fast forward, 8 hours, and I'm damn near crying in my pillow on the couch and trying to convince all the guests that I had at my house that day to get out, because I did not want to be around anybody at that moment. Like, so yeah, it started out great, and holy cow, from snap one, it went, whoa. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Actually, it was more of a, huh. It was more of a, huh.
All righty. Well, now that we've ventured down memory lane, gotten off the weeds a little bit, let's go ahead and get back onto track here a little bit, and let's talk about some of the recaps of some of the stuff that we had going last week heading into the game there. And so one of the new things that we tried out last week was called Touchdown Dance, which is a game over on Monkey Knife Fight, and the whole premise around that one was you picked 3 players to score a touchdown in the game, and then you had to pick how many, the over-under, so to speak, on the number of touchdowns, total touchdowns scored by those 3 players, to determine your prize there. Kevin and I went head-to-head on this one, and Kevin, you ended up hitting the higher prize on that one. Both of us hit our picks though, but I'll go ahead and cede the floor to you so you can take your victory lap here on hitting the higher prize point there.
So the 3 players that I chose for Touchdown Dance were Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and I went with OBJ as my third. Like, I had that feeling. We'd been talking about T. Higgins a lot. He's a guy I felt confident in, thinking that they're going to find ways to get him open, knowing that when they got close to the end zone, it was going to be Jalen Ramsey all over Jamar Chase. So, it ended up working out, because I chose the 3.5 was my over under for touchdowns, and I got 5. Like, my guys definitely outkicked their coverage. OBJ got his right away, so that's always nice. The first touchdown of the game was one of your guys, and then Kupp and Higgins each got their 2 as the game went on. So I was feeling pretty good about that one, man. I was like, hey, my dark horse and OBJ panned out. We were talking about going a couple different options possibly, and I'm definitely glad I settled in on OBJ. Like I said earlier, just unfortunate he got injured in the process of the game.
Yep. And so I ended up going with Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon. And Cooper Kupp, and I took the over 2.5 on that one. Went a little bit more conservative with that one, but I still ended up hitting there. Mine was definitely a different hit than what we thought would have happened there, right? And when we got down to it, Kevin and I were talking about the fact. And I just went, I can't get away from a running back. As much as we tend to covet the running back position, as we play fantasy football and as a show, I had to pick a running back to put in my lineup, and I definitely felt more confident Joe Mixon would find a way to get into the end zone on that one. Turns out it came as a touchdown pass to T. Higgins. And then I also had Cooper Kupp there as well, who scored his 2. So I ended up getting 3 on my call of 2.5. I hit. So Kevin was a 4 times multiplier there. I was a 2-time multiplier. But feeling pretty good that we ended up going out there and hitting the prize pool on those ones. And both of our picks hit. So I was pretty happy about that one. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I thought for it being a one game slate and narrowing it down, I felt like we both did a good job understanding where the points were going to come from in the game outside of the quarterback position.
Yeah.
A little bit of luck involved. Yeah, maybe so with that trick play. Sometimes they pan out, sometimes they don't, as we saw with the Philly special that didn't work with Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford. But, I thought our analysis was spot on and the results show. I mean, we both hit. So nothing more you can ask for.
Nope, nothing at all. So let's go ahead and let's head on over into some of the props, right? We had the fun little prop game that we had set up for Super Bowl. This thing was a perfect type of deal if you had folks over for the Super Bowl party and all of that. And I know a lot of times the guests at the Super Bowl parties aren't necessarily that engaged with watching the overall football of the game. Sometimes it's more, they're watching for other things such as halftime shows or commercials but these fun little Super Bowl prop deals are a great way to kind of engage everybody around it and gets them, you're just kind of invested in the game there a little bit. And I have to take my hat off to you two gentlemen. When it came to the high score, you guys tied for the high score with a couple of the other folks that hopped in and played along with us there, with 11 correct guesses there. I finished at 10, so you came in a point ahead of me. But looking through the list there, which one came as the biggest shock to you that you missed on for your prop, and which one was the biggest hit that you want to take your victory lap on?
I think the one that hurt the most was the first commercial, because I knew it was going to be a vehicle. Derek, you and I were talking about that. I knew it was going to be a vehicle. I went with Lexus. It was not Lexus. I think it was a child company of Lexus as we look at their corporate,
I think it was Toyota that was the first commercial, which Lexus is a subsidiary of Toyota, and it was like an Olympic theme type of deal there as well. So that was one of those, like, when you're measuring, you were out by about that much.
Yeah. So that was the one that I just looked at and I went, well, crap. Like I was right there. Just barely off. So that one's the one that stung the most. Honestly, I thought the ones that were cool was, I picked the quarters right.
Mm-hmm.
I had every single quarter right. First, second, third, and fourth, who would be leading at the end of those. Obviously, the fourth with the game winner, but I had that tagged. So I was super happy about that, only because it means that, as you're analyzing the game and how you imagine the game script going, it's cool to think, or it's cool to see that, hey, what I'm looking at, I'm not just crazy. I'm not just throwing darts at the wall. Like I know what I'm talking about a little bit.
There you go. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, the commercial one also got me. I thought for sure it would be crypto.com. I thought for sure and there was crypto, there was a crypto ad that was mixed in there, but I thought for sure it would be crypto.com. They've been going hard lately, and I just thought that would be it. I thought, if it would be a crypto commercial, but I guess the one that I'm most proud of, or shouldn't be most proud of, but the anthem is always going to go over. That is a minute and a half long song. No matter what.
1 second. That's all it was. It was 1 second over.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, with like the most of the books out there, that kind of stuff had that set at 90 seconds for the over under. To Alex's point, they all had it set at a minute and a half there. For our game purposes, one of us happened to move that line up to 110 seconds. And that guy was feeling pretty proud of himself that he managed to get that thing inside of a 2-second type of thing there, as far as calling the over under line, so to speak, on that one, which last year, that same guy did a pretty good job at setting that last year too, and made people think as far as that one goes. So, but Alex, I'm right there with you. Like, that's always a fun one there. But go ahead and keep going with that.
So beyond the anthem one, like I said, that sneaking suspicion of winner of the Super Bowl and spread, I picked that the Rams would win, and I picked that the Bengals would cover. So those were two pretty pretty proud moments there. And then I didn't realize the Super Bowl MVP, so I kind of did myself in there. Probably still would have picked a quarterback either way. Probably would not have picked Cooper Kupp. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Like I said, I was pretty happy with the fact that I moved our line for the game, for our game purposes, to 110 seconds on that. And we got an unofficial time as far as what we were using, that at 111 seconds and a little bit of change on that thing. So just coming in on the over there as well. Also managed to call the heads on the coin toss there, right? Like Kevin and I were talking on that one, and he was telling me the tails never fails as far as his logic and how he was going. And I said, they're going to call tails, but it's going to be heads. So I felt pretty accomplished on that one, that managed to call the call on what the team was going to call and what the result was going to be. So felt pretty happy on that one. As far as like the miss on one of those, I think probably my biggest miss, so to speak, was ultimately first score of the game. I really thought we would see a field goal in the first one. Turns out they go down and score a touchdown on that one with the Rams. So I thought the Bengals would get the ball first and I thought they would end up putting first points on the board with a field goal. But turns out it was the Rams. So that was my faux pas.
What color Gatorade did y'all pick?
I picked orange.
Okay. I picked yellow, thinking the Rams would win, and it was a Ram color.
It was
right?
blue.
It was blue.
It was blue.
And I was like, oh, that was another one, right? You're looking at it and go, oh, son of a gun! Like you're right there. Just, in your scientific approach to Gatorade color at the Super Bowl, but still, I had the team color train, and I was on the right train. It just not in the right car on the train.
Right. Well, that was the thing when you and I were talking last week when we were going through some of these, and I called out, I said it would be orange, even if it was the Rams that won, because I thought it was going to be Rams money line type of thing. And I thought they were going to go with an orange color just to simply kind of to rub that in a little bit more so on that one. But yeah, I do certainly appreciate your train of thought there and how you were looking at that one with the blue, and certainly a, yellow and blue with the team colors. And I like that thought process there.
I'll tell you what, something to stash away for next year as we get into it, and you want to make some in-game adjustments, as any good football player does. And I'm sure you guys saw the tweet from Schefter, but this is now 8 Super Bowls in a row that the team that lost the opening coin toss won the game. So if something to stash away for next year, whatever team loses the coin toss, head on over to your favorite website or whatever, what have you, and make yourself an in-game adjustment there, and at least fade yourself on the team that loses the opening coin toss to win the game.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that one as well, and I think that you're on to something there for sure. Let's go ahead and head over. We also did a FanDuel 1-game slate going into this one for our final DFS of the 2021 season there, and Kevin pulled it out. Very close game when it came down to it. We were separated by 0.6 points on this one when it was all said and done, with Kevin taking the edge and winning that one with the lineup there. And the big difference between yours and mine is I went with Jamar Chase, you went with Odell Beckham, and that was really the separator between the two of us there. That's one.
Yeah, Beckham. Thank goodness for the touchdown, right? Because the running back that I selected, I thought Sony Michel had a chance of sneaking into the end zone, so went for the touchdown upside there, and that didn't happen. And same thing with Tyler Boyd. Thought that there was some. That was kind of a dark horse bet through a lot of people in the industry. Is seeing where the coverages was going to go, thinking that there was a good chance that Tyler Boyd could get in the end zone. So the funny thing was, I had enough room in that roster to upgrade from Boyd to Higgins, and I didn't. Like
that would have been a massive separator. Yeah,
right. And just, mistake on my part, but I'll take the win. I did a lot of winning this weekend. I was happy with this weekend. It went very well for me on a lot of different fronts, and just keep racking them up. Keep racking them up. Cash and trophies. I collected both this weekend. It's all good.
Yep. I like it. I like it a lot. So, guys, that's going to take us down here into the final debate for the night there. And, this is a topic that seems very trending right now and is very much related to one of the Super Bowl contestants that we just watched, right? We made mention that the Rams went out there, they got guys, they brought them in, they went all in on this season, and one of the biggest acquisitions that they made this season and prior to the season and last offseason was a guy named Matthew Stafford, to bring him in to be that guy to help try and push them over the edge and over the cusp in order to try and win a Super Bowl. And certainly mission accomplished with that one there. But a topic that I've seen out there being floated around a lot lately is that this this Super Bowl win elevates Matthew Stafford as a automatic Hall of Fame quarterback on this one. I know where my thoughts truly lie on this one, but I wanted to get some other thoughts and opinions here as to what you guys think. And so let's just start the question off with, as it currently sits, right? There's obviously more to his career that we'll see. So that may change some opinions here down the road, and we'll give ourselves some grace to, change those evaluations over the remainder of his career. But as it currently sits right now, with Matthew Stafford's career, is he a Hall of Fame quarterback?
Alex, you want to kick us off here? Because I might be pounding the table by myself on something.
Well, okay. So I'm going to approach this twofold. All right. The first thing is, I think there's a false sense of importance on winning a Super Bowl as a quarterback.
Agreed.
Oftentimes we hear that wins, there are people out there, they have chosen the hill to die on, that wins are not a quarterback stat, because it is a team game and wins come from the team, not from the quarterback position. And we know that because Matt Stafford is a good quarterback. He didn't win a lot in Detroit because he didn't have a team around him, right? He had one other player a majority of his career there in Detroit, and that wasn't enough to overcome the deficiencies of the 18 other guys on the field, 19 other guys on the field, at any given time that were for his team. So here, do I think that Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Fame quarterback? To answer that question, I'm going to answer a different question that I have. And I think that Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he didn't win a Super Bowl. He never got to a Super Bowl. But I think had Matt Stafford stayed in Detroit and continued to put up the statistics that he was having, and now, yes, the game has changed, and the game has changed dramatically, even in the last 5 years for quarterback play. And so my response is, if Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, which I truly believe that he is, then the statistical range, the trajectory that Stafford is on in his career, which is now 4 years less than Rivers. Rivers played from 04 to 20. Stafford's been in the league from 09 to 21. So we're looking at, what is that, 18 seasons, right, for Rivers. And this is now year whatever for Matt Stafford, 13 for Stafford. So he's got, 5 more years left. On his current trajectory, he's gonna have pretty much equal passing stats to Phillip Rivers. If you stat him out, their completion percentage, Phillip Rivers had 64.9. Matt Stafford right now is 63. Yards, Rivers finished with 63,440. Stafford is 5 yards away from 50,000. Touchdowns, Phillip Rivers 421. Matt Stafford 323. If he has another 41 touchdown year next year, he's right. He's well on his way to getting to that number. So because I think Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, then I can't not say that Matt Stafford is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Does this win automatically put him in the Hall of Fame? No, but I thought he was trending towards that direction anyways. This gives the writers and the voters and everything a little bit more fodder. Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl win, and he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. So winning the Super Bowl, I think, has too much fake weighted importance to it. That one game does not define a career, and yet all of a sudden, when somebody wins a Super Bowl, they're considered a Hall of Fame type talent. It is the tipping point into this Hall of Fame conversation. So I think Matt Stafford, when it's all said and done, yes, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think any quarterback that, had to endure what he had to endure in Detroit and did it for that long, we clearly knew he was good. He just needed a team around him, and that was proven, because it is a team sport. So I say yes, he is a Hall of Fame quarterback, but not just because he won Super Bowl 56.
Kevin, you want to go ahead and lead the charge on your narrative before I get cooking on mine?
Sure. No, Phillip Rivers is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Hall of Very Good, not Hall of Fame. I think he's on the cusp, and I want to be able to jump in with both feet for so many reasons. Because Matt Stafford has had a very good career playing for, until this past season, a lot of really bad teams. And when he had some help around him, he did well those years. He had an 11-5 season, 2 10-4 seasons, 11-5, couple 10-6 seasons. Had some 9-win seasons there. I think there's all jumbled together in like a 5-year span where he was playing with Calvin Johnson. And then what separates me for him in fighting for the Hall of Fame honestly doesn't have much to do with this Super Bowl. It has to do with fourth quarter comebacks. It has to do with fourth quarter passing efficiencies. People want to point to some of his interceptions and things like that. You're taking big sample sizes, and much like the first interception that he threw in the Super Bowl, it was 3rd and 14, and he was trying to make a play, so he bombed it into the end zone. Yes, it's an interception, and we probably look poorly on those just as much as we overrate, some Super Bowl wins for quarterbacks as well. But Matt Stafford probably needs to have another deep playoff run to convince everybody. But I think if I had to vote today, I would vote him in because of some of the intangibles that he's had around him, his toughness, right? The way that he's been able to lead bad teams. He this season alone, he had more wins versus 10 win or more teams than he did in his entire 12 season career in Detroit. So it's not the level of competition. He was never afraid of competition, but he doesn't play defense, and he can't do anything about getting the ball back. And when you're forced to go out and score 35 points a game because your defense has given up 34 points a game, it makes it hard for your overall career win-loss record to look good. I know Richard Sherman was bagging on him because of the things that he hasn't done. Well, he now has as many Super Bowl rings as Richard Sherman, and quite frankly, he's done more with less than Richard Sherman ever has. So I like the argument about this. I think this is good banter, but when it comes down to it, Stafford's in, Philip Rivers is not.
Okay, so for me, this is a multi-part facet type of thing that I'm going to go through here. So jump in when I say something that you want to when you want to touch on a little deeper here. So for Matt Stafford, he's in the Hall of Good for me right now, right? I'd even move him to the Hall of Very Good, but he's not Hall of Fame for me yet, right? And I'll let the story finish being written before I say firmly what my answer is, yes or no. But as it sits right now, no, I would not put him in the Hall of Fame. Several reasons. One, we just had a massive conversation a couple weeks ago about the elite level quarterbacks, and Matthew Stafford was not top 5 on any of our list of current NFL quarterbacks. And I don't know at any point throughout his career you would say that he's a top 5 quarterback for that season going back through it. So that being the case, right? And I think for most of us, when we went through our list, he was somewhere between a 7 and 9 is kind of the range of outcomes there. So I don't know that, the fact that he's not, we don't even consider him as an elite quarterback at the position in the league at the moment. And there's probably 6, 7, 8 guys that we would put ahead of him in that conversation right now as that sits. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think the fact that when you look at statistical output, there's a lot of things that go into that one as well. Yes, he has a ton of fourth quarter comebacks. He has a ton of game-winning drives, which a lot of that speaks to the fact that, they were down in games to begin with in order to make that one happen, which speaks to the fact that his teams weren't very good. So I can get that argument there. But if you are going to say that a quarterback is ultimately defined on whether or not they need to get into the Hall of Fame by wins and losses in the Super Bowl, you need to take that entire win-loss ratio throughout their career into it. So if you're going to say that Matthew Stafford gets into the Hall of Fame off of this one game, off of this Super Bowl title, you need to look at the fact that over the course of his career, he has a losing record in games started, right? He is, over the course of his career, 86, 95, and 1 as far as games started on win-loss tie ratios there, which losing record, not very good. So I'm willing to, I'm not a big believer in that that a quarterback has to win a Super Bowl in order to get into the Hall of Fame. But if you're going to tell me that argument, you have to look at the win-loss ratios there as well. A losing record doesn't do it for me there as well. When you look at some of the statistical arguments there as well, there's guys out there playing similar amounts of seasons that, that are going to outdo him, right? Matt Ryan has 10,000 more passing yards, more touchdowns, similar interception totals to it. And I don't think any of us are pounding the table to put Matt Ryan into the Hall of Fame in there as well. And he's had a very productive, good career there as well. And I bring up Matt Ryan because I think at that point it speaks to the larger trend that we see here on the NFL as a whole. So when you look at it, the era in which the NFL is played and how the game is played is fundamentally different than it was several years ago. Even back to a guy like Dan Marino, who was an epic passer back in the day. The game is fundamentally different than it was back then, to the point where, I remember times when right after Terrell Davis retired, a lot of folks didn't think that he necessarily put together a long enough career in order to get it into it. And there's a lot of running backs nowadays that don't even get to the similar length of career, similar statistical numbers as a Terrell Davis does. But you've got to then, when you look at how the game's played, you've got to put them in there against their contemporaries, right? So putting that into it, and you put Matthew Stafford up against his contemporaries, there's a lot of his contemporaries out there that I don't know that we're going to, that we would argue are not Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks that have either similar statistics, have more Super Bowl wins, things like that. Like Joe Flacco is a guy that nobody's going to say needs to be in the Hall of Fame, has a similar, Matthew Stafford has outpaced him in total yards, has outpaced him a few of these other things, but Joe Flacco has the 2 Super Bowl rings, and a similar statistical output on some of those seasons there as well.
Okay,
here's
where I'm going to jump in. It's an either or.
Right.
So it's Matt Stafford or. Okay. Let's start with Joe Flacco, since that's the guy you were just talking about.
I'll take Matt Stafford in that vacuum.
Okay. Alex?
Stafford, yeah.
Okay. Matt Ryan?
Toss up. I see that really as being a push between the two of them, to be perfectly honest with you. Over the course of their careers, I'll take it as a push pretty much.
I'm trying to get my... Dang it.
If you're going to tell me about next season, and if we frame this
I'm just talking career-wise, right?
Career-wise, yeah, I think it's a push, honestly, when it's all said and done. If we're talking next season, I've got to pick one of those guys to be the quarterback for my team next season. I'll pick Matt Stafford.
And I got 3 more here.
Okay.
Eli Manning.
That was another guy I was going to get to here shortly on that. Another guy that win-loss ratio, not great, has 2 Super Bowl titles. And again, is another guy that, looking at that, there's a lot of those years that throughout Eli's career, we would have not even put Eli Manning in, top 10 in the quarterback league there. And I think that's another good comp to it.
Ben Roethlisberger.
I think depends on what era of Big Ben you're talking about. You're talking younger Big Ben?
Any era of Big Ben. Just their specific skill sets. Every single one of these teams had better defenses than Matt Stafford ever had until this season.
Correct.
So that does inherently play something into some of the win-loss and ability and everything else. So
it certainly shifts it.
And then last but not least, Phillip Rivers. Like all these guys right here, right? And and there are lots of people who are for and against, maybe not so much Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco, but these last couple, right? Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger. And I'd argue that I would take Matthew Stafford if we started all their careers over today and they all had the opportunity to play for Team X. I don't care which one. I would fight tooth and nail that Matthew Stafford is the guy that I would want leading that charge for the course of his career over any of the guys that we just named.
I could certainly see that argument there. I probably would lean more towards a Big Ben than a Matthew Stafford there, but it's going to be close.
But how many years were their numbers identical, just flipped, right? Ben Roethlisberger's numbers at home and Matthew Stafford's numbers on the road were identical, right? Like the whole joke was in single quarterback leagues, you draft Big Ben and Matt Stafford, so that way you can play Roethlisberger during his away games and Stafford during his home games, and you come out with a QB1 for like 6 straight seasons. They compared that. I know, crap, who am I thinking of? Mr. Roto, the guy from the ESPN guy. Alex, help me.
Matthew Berry?
Yes, Berry. He's the one. He put that article out. Hell, what? 7-8 years ago now, something like that. But he was comparing all that because we were laughing about it when we were all in college together.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess, and that's part of how I'm thinking about it, right? Like we have all these guys who are hitting these milestones and everything else. I none of these guys have been able to feed two of the top four most dynamic wide receiver seasons ever. Matthew Stafford has two of them. He
Right.
did it with Calvin Johnson and just did it with Cooper Kupp. Only thing he's missing is the Randy Moss, Tom Brady year and Jerry Rice's best year with Montana.
I'm gonna slightly contradict what I said earlier.
This
No,
will be fun.
no takebacks. No takebacks.
No, I'm not taking anything back because
You
his
just
story.
say contradict. That's a take back.
I said slightly contradict.
It's like my kid. I might have done that. I might have spilled the water and not
It's
cleaned
the
it up.
Larry David commercial, which was one of the better ones during the Super Bowl. He's like, I'm usually right about these things too. So here's another metric that I think is to Derek's point of quarterbacks or what have you, running backs, wide receivers. You are judged based on your peers, right? You are judged based on your peers. You're judged based on how you perform in the era of football, whether that transcends eras. And it seems like, really we've entered into a new one with all of the rules adjustments that have been made for, offensive play and everything. We are in kind of this new era of really, really, really quarterback centric, football.
Right.
Where if you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win because it's just they've put so much importance on that position, and they've made it so that if you sneeze on the guy, it's a penalty, right? So like it has made the game easier for quarterbacks. Matt Stafford has been selected, to one Pro Bowl. One. He has never been first team All-Pro. So when you're looking at, and people do take that into consideration, Hall of Fame writers take that stuff into consideration. I know that we all think that the Pro Bowl is a joke, and the game itself actually is, but to be selected to it, there is something to that shows that either your peers believe that you are one of the best to be playing that season, or that the football writers believe that you're one of the best to be played that season when it comes to all pros. Now, Phillip Rivers had been named to 8 Pro Bowls, right? He has a comeback player of the year.
You want to know why Phillip
Stafford
Rivers was
has a
named to
comeback
8 Pro
player of the
Bowls?
year. He was selected to 8 Pro Bowls.
You want to know why? Because he was always the fourth guy in behind Brady, Manning, and Roethlisberger, who played in all the Super Bowls and couldn't go to the Pro Bowl.
He was selected to 8 Pro Bowls.
But you see, that's horse crap,
I
man.
understand. You're going to look back at it, and that's what you're going to see. Here's the other thing. Matt Ryan had an MVP season. He was named MVP of the league, right?
With
now,
statistics
he doesn't have
worse
quite the wins
than what Matt Stafford did this year.
Right, but we've also seen Jared Goff put up very similar statistical numbers to what we just saw Matthew Stafford did in that same offense.
He had 41 touchdowns.
We pull that one up, but it was not far off when we were looking at that the other day.
But the other thing about Matt Ryan is he's played one season more than Matt Stafford. It's a few more games because Stafford has missed some more time. He's
10,000 more passing yards.
He's had Julio Jones his entire career.
And 1,000 more passing, or 1,000 more completions and like 2,000 more attempts.
But if Calvin Johnson doesn't
the football a lot.
Oh, come on. If Calvin Johnson doesn't get pissed off at the Lions and retire at the pinnacle of his career, and Matt Stafford's able to carry out an extra 6 seasons with Calvin Johnson like Matt Ryan had with Julio, are we really thinking that those numbers are that far apart? Instead, he was throwing to Mike Williams Mike Williams, and who was the other guy that they drafted that they tried to pile up there? Like, they struck out on like 6 receivers in a row until they had Kenny Galladay.
Let me tell you. So it's 40. We're talking about a difference of 40 games. Matt Ryan came into the league 1 year before Matt Stafford did. 2008 was Matt Ryan's rookie year. 2009 was Matt Stafford's rookie year. Now Stafford, much younger than Matt Ryan, right? Came into the league 2 years younger than him. But it's a 40-game difference. There's
3 and
40
third
games.
seasons, right?
Huh?
3 and third seasons.
Right. So we're talking about 40 games difference there. And Matt Ryan has 8,003 attempts, passing attempts. Matt Stafford has 6,825. Now that's a difference of, let me do my quick math here. That's 1,178 passing attempts difference.
Okay. Divide that by 40.
Talking 30 a game. 29.45 a game. He has to average 30 a game to get to that number.
Which is easily doable with a Matt Stafford offense, right? That's well within the wheelhouse.
Reasonable. Completion percentage is up 10,000, basically 10,000 more yards. It's 9,800 more yards.
So I think it's fair to say that the statistical output between the two, right? When you normalize it over the course of games played, things like that are going to be very, very similar on a per game basis. Is that what I'm hearing you say there, Alex?
I think they're the same guy with 40 games difference. 33 comebacks, 42 game winning drives. Who did I just describe?
Right. They both have very, very similar numbers there when you look at it from that standpoint too. Matthew Stafford, 34 comebacks, 42 game-winning drives, and Matt Ryan, 33 comebacks with 42 game-winning drives over the course of their careers.
I think
28-3.
Though I understand.
One could argue that was just as much.
One game does not define. It's the same argument I'm making, and it's the same argument you're making, Kevin.
But one game does that game not define Mark Sanchez? Don't tell me one game doesn't define you.
That's one moment. Same thing with Odell Beckham, right? Like the catch,
one play,
that one-handed deal, like
one game
that can define.
One game does not define a career, which gets back to my original point of, I think there's too much put on to the fact that a quarterback won a Super Bowl. It is not quarterback. I am fully on board with the wins are not a quarterback stat. I fully subscribe to that line of thinking. And because he won what so happened to be the last game of the year does not make it a Hall of Fame career. Now, everything else that he's done leading up to this, I do believe will put him and as he continues on this trend, I do believe he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
How many Pro Bowls has Eli Manning made in his career?
Are you asking because you know the answer?
I'm asking because whatever the number is, do we really feel like that's deserved, or is that based off of name and market that you're in?
4 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs.
So, and the Super Bowls are what stands out, right? The fact that he's MVP of both those Super Bowls and beating Patriots teams, sure. But of those 4 Pro Bowls, excuse me as I get tongue-tied, did Eli really deserve to be a Pro Bowler any of those years? Or is that, oh, hey, look, he did better than we expected, and he plays in New York, which is the largest media outlet in the freaking world, so of course people are going to vote him in. The Bronx could outvote Detroit by themselves, right? Like the Bronx can outvote Detroit by itself to get Eli Manning into a Pro Bowl over Matt Stafford.
I would say, and certainly, I would say that each year that he made the Pro Bowl, it was deserved, with maybe the exception of 2008. Statistically, it wasn't anything special that year. 3,200 yards, 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He was named to the Pro Bowl that year in 2008. Every other year in 2011, 5 fourth quarter comebacks, 6 game winning drives. In 2012, and those were on 9 and 7 teams, by the way. Completion percentage right around 60%. Almost a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. It was 29-16 in 2011. It was 26-15 in 2012. He had some really egregious years after that. And then in 2015, he was named to the Pro Bowl. He had 35 touchdowns and 14 picks. Threw for over 4,400 yards. That one might have been a gimme. They were 6-10 that year. I think the threshold for quarterback to getting into the Hall of Fame, I think that threshold is much lower than I think it should be.
I think for the most part, the Hall of Fame threshold has been lowered very significantly as we've kind of gotten going through to the point where we're seeing a lot of folks, say that guys are an automatic, Hall of Fame caliber player, where statistically it looks very good compared to some other guys that are in the Hall of Fame there. But again, that goes back to the point that I was making earlier, that you have to take those things in the era in which the game was played for them, right? Like, the game evolves, the game changed. The game is played completely different today in 2022 than it was in 2002. Very different than it was played in 1982. So, it's one of those that the best measure that you can do it against is going to be their peers. And again, for me right now, Matthew Stafford, I would put him as probably, eighth, ninth quarterback out there type of thing. So I wouldn't even put him into that elite tier of quarterbacks in the league at this very moment in time.
It's a great debate.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And an interesting thing too, and I think we're going to learn a lot about the Hall of Fame in 5 years' time.
I think so too.
There's 2 quarterbacks that'll be up.
Yeah,
in the same class.
And
I think we'll learn a lot in 4 years' time too, because there's 2 quarterbacks that'll be up in the same class that I feel are both Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And there's definitely 2 quarterbacks that everybody thinks are Hall of Fame quarterbacks in 5 years' time for sure.
Right.
So we're going to learn a lot about the Hall here in the coming years of what those gatekeepers believe belongs in Canton.
Right. And it's one of those to that point too, right? Like recently we haven't really seen 2 quarterbacks headline a class, right? Like we've seen some of these where the classes have 2 quarterbacks in it, but it's typically not 2 guys that got on first ballot type of deal. I believe when Peyton Manning was inducted, you also had Ken Stabler that was inducted as well that same year. And I may be off on that, but it was one of those that one of the quarterbacks first ballot Hall of Famer, and then a distant one where it took several attempts at getting into the Hall of Fame there. So I think you're right. I think it'll be interesting. I think we're going to get some very good tells on what this is going to ultimately look like and where the bar is going to truly be set here over the next probably 4 or 5 class inductions that we see here. So very cool. Any other thoughts on this topic?
These are the fun ones, right? These are the fun topics that you sit down around, whether you're at a bar or just hanging out with your buddies around a barbecue or something that, that's why we like them.
Yes, absolutely. So guys, if you do think of any topics that you want to see us debate here on the show, shoot those over to us. You can find us at the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok now even at Good Old Boys FF. And hit us up with your thoughts. And if you want us to debate something, just let us know. But guys, I do believe that's going to take us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts for the listeners and viewers out there?
Enjoy the off season. Be sure to tune in. We'll have content coming every single week. We're going to start breaking down some of the draft class by position here going forward for a little bit as we lead into free agency, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and then obviously the draft, and after that, we start getting into our team breakdowns. So lots of fun stuff heading everybody's way, but be sure to tune in and check it out to get a leg up on your competition.
I like it. Alex, any final thoughts?
So it felt like a long season. It was a long football season. The extra week,
Love it.
the extra couple playoff games that we got out of it. It was a long season. I'm from a fantasy perspective, it was a disappointing season. So I'm happy to turn the page and hope springs eternal, right? From a real football fan's perspective, for my team, that was a long season. And there's a topic that we'll likely have to debate, and it might be quicker than we want to debate it, I think, depending on how things go here in the next couple of weeks. But it was a long season. It ended very well with quality football games, and now the real work begins as we get ready for free agency and the draft.
Absolutely. Well, guys, appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to our debates and our conversations there, our recaps. Like the boys have already said here, we have a ton of great content set to come to you over the next month and a half or so leading up to the NFL draft. Lots of great topics that we're going to be covering there to help you guys get ready for dynasty drafts on that and getting players scouted, getting the prep work done there as well. And, one of the best ways to do that is to head to our YouTube channel, Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button, ring that bell. We go live every Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern during the off season to bring you all of the content that way, as well as the fact that you'll be able to get some of the player profiles, some of the short little videos that we get done up there for you and get those ready for you. But that's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. We're going to call it a night. Have a good one. Be safe.